X-Men 97 was a revival of X-Men the Animated Series from the 90s, and it was met with a lot of praise. Something else this revival did was get people talking about a potential revival for the 90s Spider-Man show, which took place in the same shared universe as X-Men and other various shows. John Semper Jr., one of the original creators behind Spider-Man the Animated Series, even expressed his own interest in reviving the show. With the success of Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, a revival sadly might never happen. But that doesn't mean watching Spider-Man the Animated Series in today's day and age is off the table. It is a fantastic show full of amazing story arcs that influenced the future of Spider-Man media. So, if you are someone who is planning on diving into Spider-Man the Animated Series, I'm here to warn you. I'm serious. Not because the show's offensive or anything. I really love 90s Spider-Man. I'm here to warn people that unless you have nostalgia for the show, a lot of it's not very good. Now let me give you a real-world experience I had that inspired the creation of this video. I love The Spectacular Spider-Man. Like for many people, it's my favorite Spider-Man TV show, and I managed to get one of my friends who had never seen it to watch it. He loved it, and we ended up binging the entire series in 2 days. This led to him asking me if there were any other Spider-Man TV shows worth watching, and I recommended the 90s series. So, we turned on episode 1, and he hated it. Now, I watched the show as a kid, so I figured maybe the show wasn't as good as I remember, and it's just nostalgia talking. Many of the episodes moved at a breakneck speed to fit an entire complicated plot into a 20-minute runtime. And on top of that, the 90s series acts like the original Spider-Man comics from the 60s, with extensive narration. I really wanted my friend to enjoy the show because I had such fond memories of watching it on DVD as a kid. And that's when it hit me. The DVDs. And one VHS I owned were the perfect way to watch the series. Sadly, they never actually released the entire series. Where's my Blu-ray box set, Sony? Or Disney? I don't know who's in charge of that. Also, before we continue, I had the Spider-Man the Animated Series DVD titled The Ultimate Villain Showdown, and at some point it got lost. I don't know how this happened because my DVDs never left my house, except for this one time my mom gave a bunch of old DVDs to my cousins. I've been to their house and looked for it before, but never found it. Do you guys ever think about that scene from Halloween Town 2 where the main characters discover that whenever anything is lost, they appear in that trash monster's house? Because sometimes I think that's real, and that is where my lost items end up. Is my Spider-Man the Animated Series DVD with the first appearance of the 90s Green Goblin sitting in that guy's house right now? Anyways, as I was originally saying, the entire series was never officially given a home release. They instead released specific story arcs and connected storylines into packages of 5 to 6 episodes. This led to a DVD like the Venom Saga, for example, which only included the alien costume parts 1 through 3, which took place towards the end of Season 1, and the episodes Venom Returns and Carnage, which were part of Season 3. You were given story arcs that spanned multiple episodes so that you did not have to worry about the breakneck speed they usually moved at, and you avoided what many would consider filler episodes. Now, I am not saying that the only way to watch this show is to go and buy the DVDs, but rather I'm saying if you were a new viewer or want to introduce someone to the show, watch storylines that span multiple episodes, like with how the DVD would bundle them. This might lead to you jumping around from season to season if, let's say, you want to watch the Daredevil Arc, and then you decide that you want to watch the Secret Wars arc. Just trust me, your enjoyment of the show will be greatly improved, and you will get to watch some fantastic episodes. Or don't take my word for it. Do what you want, I don't know you. Now, if you do want to take my word for it, then let me tell you about some of my favorite story arcs and why you should watch them. I'll also include this snazzy graphic of all the different story arcs in the show, and include a link to the graphic in the description. If you see one that interests you, boot up Disney Plus and go give it a watch. I would also never condone pirating the episodes for legal reasons, because I don't want to get sued.
In this first episode, this tar-like substance called Promethium X suddenly covers our hero Spider-Man. And at first, it seems that it gives him what any person or any superhero would want. It gives him increased powers. So Spider-Man should be so happy. He's not only a superhero, but he's now a superhero. He can do more than he ever could. He's more powerful than he's ever been. But like everything else in life, everything you get seems to come at a cost. And the cost to Spider-Man is that he loses control over his own will. And where he had been a good, caring, heroic person, suddenly he begins to change.
The first story arc I'm going to talk about is the Venom Saga. There have been thousands of takes on the symbiote suit, but the 90 series took what had been established in the comics and made a pretty definitive take on it that has now been used in countless other versions.
What a nightmare! For a second I thought I was going out of my mind? Where am I?
The heck?
I've been looking for you. I know I don't like being blamed for crimes I didn't commit. Or any crimes, really. Bad for business.
Apparently, it's a symbiote, an organism that thrives by bonding with another.
In this case, me.
Don't let any of that get on you. Why not? It has the characteristics of a symbiote, which needs to bond to a host to survive. And sometimes these things in nature, when they bind, they can be hard to unbind.
No! Move your ooze! We will not allow.
I don't want to spoil everything, because it really is worth watching, but one major reason to watch it is how it shows the symbiote take over Peter's mind and bring out his darkest impulses. In the original comics, Peter wore the symbiote for months, without it affecting his mind or enhancing his powers. The show introduced that. It took a while for him to discover it was a living alien, whereas the show just gets to the point. As soon as he gets the suit, you start seeing subtle changes, but nothing too drastic to make you think, hey, this thing might be dangerous. As the episodes go on, however, the symbiote drives Peter more and more off the edge.
All right, I give up. I'd rather go to jail than to be a snitch.
Who said anything about jail?
Huh? I don't get it.
You will. It's like this. I'm through with not getting what I want.
What are you doing? I told you, I give up.
That's funny. I give up too. I give up trying to be a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man.
No, you can't.
Can't I?
Until we arrive at the infamous Shocker scene.
Get back here, Shocker! Shocker! You can't escape me! I'll chase you to the ends of the earth!
Alright, I've been talking about this story arc for too long. We also get Venom and Carnage. They don't overstay their welcome. It's fun! I, however, am going to overstay my welcome and talk about this arc a little longer. You probably already noticed the comparisons to this arc in other Spider-Man media that I have shown, but something much more subtle is how the episodes Venom Returns and Carnage from 1996 very possibly inspired Null. Now, please bear with me because this is pure speculation. But all you need to know about Null is that in the comics he is this all-powerful being that created the symbiotes, and he has control over many of them. His first appearance wasn't until Thor God of Thunder Volume 1, Issue Number 6, which released in 2013. Then his first fully established appearance was in Venom Volume 4, Issue Number 3, which came out in 2018. And eventually he was the main antagonist of the 2020 comic event King in Black by Donny Cates, which is where he rose to popularity. Now, in the 90s series, the Doctor Strange villain Dormammu,
I've come to bargain.
summons the Venom symbiote to Earth, and later the Carnage symbiote, so that he can get them to do his bidding. Now, whether this TV show arc influenced the creation of Null or not is unclear, But I'm not one to look the other way at coincidences.
One thing you always try to do in a story is make the villain more powerful than the hero. As I mentioned before, if the hero catches a litter bug, nobody's impressed. Or if he catches a regular burglar or something like that. So you have to make the villain, seem to be even more powerful, because the best thing, the thing the audience, the viewer, the reader, depending whether it's a cartoon, a book, or what, the thing your audience most enjoys is trying to figure out, how is he going to get out of this? It's impossible. He doesn't have a chance. So you, by making the villain apparently in control and more powerful, you build up the suspense and you hold the viewer's interest. Well, the Green Goblin, to all intents and purposes, should have been Spider-Man superior, because as Norman Osborn, a very intelligent businessman, more than a businessman, he was the head of a cartel. I mean, he was the Bill Gates of his industry. So he certainly was Spider-Man's equal, if not superior, in intelligence. As the Green Goblin, he had that silly little goblin glider that was rocket-propelled, that he would ride, that could go a zillion miles an hour, it looked like, and he could control it magnificently. He had all these little goblin bombs and things that he would drop, and anything he needed, I gave him a bomb for that purpose. If he needed nobody to see him, he had a smoke bomb, which would obliterate him. If he had to go through a wall, he had a destructo bomb. He'd throw it at the wall, and it would melt. I mean, we just made up anything. So how on earth could Spider-Man beat somebody like that? Well, you'll have to see the cartoon, but he beat him.
The Green Goblin arc is probably the longest running and most impactful to the overall story of the series. The Green Goblin doesn't show up until Season 3, but the seeds are planted back in Season 1 with the Hobgoblin, which is something unique about this series. In the comics, the Green Goblin first debuted in The Amazing Spider-Man Volume 1, issue number 14 from 1964, which is a bizarre first appearance where he tries to trick Spider-Man into starring in a Hollywood movie. Also, the Hulk was there, and the Green Goblin's identity was a mystery. The Hobgoblin later debuts in Peter Parker the Spectacular Spider-Man Volume 1, issue number 43 from 1980. In the comics, we eventually discover that the Hobgoblin found one of Norman Osborn's old Green Goblin hideouts and modified his gear to become the Hobgoblin. Now, in Spider-Man the Animated Series, it's the other way around, with Norman finding the Hobgoblin's old gear stashed away in Oscorp. Also, somehow, the Goblin gas that gives Norman his powers and drives him insane is also able to just completely alter the Hobgoblin costume. I never got how that worked, but I'm not going to question it. Anyways, in the Green Goblin story arc, we get to see Norman's descent into madness and how he ends up becoming Spidey's greatest foe. Neil Ross also gives my favorite performance as the Green Goblin.
All right, Hobgoblin. You're not the Hobgoblin.
How observant you are! No, I'm not the Hobgoblin, Meddler. I'm the Green Goblin. Not that you live long enough for it to matter.
Sorry, Willem Dafoe.
Thanks. Thanks a lot for not picking me.
The Green Goblin saga seemed to also have had a lot of influence on Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 1 specifically. Something we did not really see much of in the comics is Norman and the Green Goblin talking with each other as almost separate entities. In his original appearances, the Green Goblin had completely taken over. Norman was nuts and saw the Green Goblin as himself. There was no inner turmoil. One day an experiment went wrong and poof, now he's the Green Goblin. There have also been like a million retcons with the creation of the comic book Green Goblin and how it affects Norman, but that's a whole can of worms that I don't want to get into right now. So anyway, moving on to Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 1. Norman tries to fight against becoming the Goblin, horrified when he realizes what he has done. But Norman wasn't exactly an upstanding citizen before the Goblin experiment went wrong, so he constantly gives in to the Goblin. In these scenes, we witness Willem Dafoe give a phenomenal performance where he acts against himself in a mirror. Norman Osborn on one side and the Green Goblin on the other. Now, if you've caught on to the pattern of this video, I'm about to tell you that this was done before in Spider-Man the Animated Series. Norman argues with his Goblin half in the mirror, scared of what he will become, only to eventually give in and lose himself to the madness.
Let me out now!
No, no, no!
Now, to set up this next scene, I must first take you back to 1966, The Amazing Spider-Man Volume 1, issue number 39, when the Green Goblin first learned Peter Parker's identity as Spider-Man. The Goblin follows Spider-Man on his glider in the distance until he eventually watches him change out of his costume, where he discovers that Peter is Spider-Man. After the Green Goblin discovers Peter's identity, he immediately meets Peter at his home and ambushes him, forcing Peter to fight back without his costume in his own front yard. The Green Goblin ends up capturing Peter with some steel wire and flies him away to his hideout, where Peter only ends up escaping because the Green Goblin sets him free. Fast forward to the 90s show, and the Green Goblin finding out Peter is Spider-Man is dragged throughout the episode. The same thing as the comics happens, where the Green Goblin follows Spider-Man until he changes out of his costume. The episode then diverges from the original comic storyline, and instead begins to adapt another. In Spectacular Spider-Man number 2 from 1968, Peter and his friends are invited to dinner at the Osborn mansion, and Peter begins to realize that Norman remembers who he is. In their previous encounter, he ends up with slight amnesia and forgets Pete's identity. Anyways, Norman is planning on telling everyone at the dinner, so Peter quickly thinks on his feet and chucks some web cartridges in the fireplace to start a fire and evacuate the building. In the commotion, he quickly changes into his Spider-Man costume while Norman also changes into his Green Goblin costume, and the fighting commences. Now, back in the episode of the animated series, the same exact thing takes place, only the dinner is a party with more guests, and Peter never gets the chance to change into his costume. Norman, of course, has the upper hand, already in full Goblin attire, and he traps Peter in that same steel wire from the comics as he drags him off into the night sky. One big difference from the comics is that the 90s show actually remembers that Peter's one of the smartest characters in the Marvel Universe, and allows him to quickly escape from the steel wire on his own, instead of needing the Green Goblin to free him on his own, you know? Because, I mean, isn't that kind of lame? I think it's lame. It's like your greatest villain of all time captures you, and then he just goes, all right, you can go. I'll just let you go after I told you everything. It's like, isn't that ridiculous? And then they fight anyway, and Peter beats him up. Now, let's finally fast forward to the early 2000s and take a look at Spider-Man 1. Thanksgiving dinner. Norman has the realization that Peter is Spider-Man, but instead of creating a really tense scene where Peter also realizes that Norman knows, we instead have Norman blow up Aunt May later in the film.
But deliver us.
Shh. She's sleeping so peacefully, I couldn't disturb her.
I'm not saying the way Raimi portrays the same dinner scene from the comics and TV show is bad. The movie has this great scene prior where Peter's sticking to the ceiling when everyone barges into his room, and then the blood drops and he quickly makes his way under the balcony. Man, I love Spider-Man 1. That scene rocks. Forget this video. I'm gonna go rewatch it right now. Where's my Blu-ray? Now, it's entirely possible that when making Spider-Man 1, they thought about having Peter realize Norman knew his secret during the dinner in a similar fashion to both the show and comics. But they stopped themselves because they weren't at a point in the movie where they wanted to reveal that. Peter needed a few more character-driven scenes with Mary Jane and Aunt May before he ventured out into the city to fight the Green Goblin. With all that being said, I love Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 1, and I wouldn't change a thing, but I also think that the 90s series did their take on this scene better. You can truly cut the tension in the 90s dinner scene like a hot knife through butter.
In doing these superhero stories, our purpose had always been, first and foremost, to treat these characters as if they were real people, and to let them get into situations that real people could get into so the average reader could relate to the stories. And I thought, what would be more fun than to have one of our heroes be accused of a crime and actually have to defend himself in court? And isn't it lucky that another one of our heroes happens to be an attorney, so we can let him be the guest star in the series and let one hero be defending another hero in court. And even though these are costumed superheroes, the story is dealing with something that could happen to any normal human being, to any reader himself. And that was always one of my favorite situations.
Another small arc I want to talk about is the Daredevil Arc. It never influenced future adaptations like the previous arcs, but I think it easily could have. It is only 2 episodes long and potentially gives us a glimpse of what Spider-Man No Way Home would have been if they hadn't gone full-on multiverse. As Stan Lee already explained, Peter's framed for a crime he didn't commit and has to team up with the man without fear, Daredevil, to clear his name. I mean, just imagine if Daredevil helping Peter clear his name was an entire movie and not something that got cleared up off-screen with Matt Murdock making a small cameo when catching a brick. 2 other fun arcs are the Secret Wars arc, which is light years better than the original 1984 comic event, and the Spider-Verse arc. Instead of being 12 issues of mostly mindless action, 90 Secret Wars is instead 3 character-driven episodes with an emphasis on the relationship between the Fantastic Four and Doctor Doom, which potentially influenced the 2015 Secret Wars comic, that showed the complicated relationship between Mr. Fantastic and Dr. Doom. The last 2 episodes of the series is the first instance of the Spider-Verse. There's not much influential about these episodes other than the fact that it was the first ever instance of Spider-Man from across the universe teaming up. Spider-Man Shattered Dimensions, the Spider-Verse comics, and the original Ultimate Spider-Man comics were much more influential towards the current Spider-Verse movies, which brought the concept into the mainstream, but the original concept is still from the 90s Spider-Man. It's been fun to talk about Spider-Man the Animated Series and its lasting impact on other Spider-Man media, but I think the main reason the show stood the test of time and deserves a reboot just as much as the 90s X-Men is that at its heart, it truly understands the character of Spider-Man. Someone who, after all he's been through, will always get up and keep fighting for the little guy. The famous phrase is, with great power comes great responsibility. And while not all of us have great power like Spider-Man, in the animated series, he always inspires us to do the right thing.
As I was mentioning that I don't think it hurts to put a little moral tone or a little lesson in these stories. And maybe that's what I was after with the whole Spider-Man bit. Because once again, if you remember the beginning, Peter Parker, as smart as he was, I think he reacted like any young person would. Wow, I've got a superpower. I can make money with it. You know, I'll get all the women. I'll do anything I want. But then he realized that because he didn't care about other people, because he let that robber escape, something terrible happened. His uncle died. And then he realized with great power comes great responsibility. And that was probably the most blatant bit of preaching that I have put in a comic. I've always tried to be more subtle than that, but I did try, again, knowing that young people read these books, I tried to show that the most important thing to think of is to do the right thing. It doesn't matter whether you're just an ordinary kid, you're not particularly good at anything, you're not super, you're not the world's greatest student or the world's greatest athlete, or whether you're Mr. Wonderful. You can do anything better than anybody. The important thing is the young kid with no special power who does the right thing is more of a hero than the guy with all the power in the world who doesn't do the right thing. And if that little message can come across, then I feel the whole bit about Spider-Man has been worthwhile.